All right, let's factor trinomials. We're going to factor quadratic trinomials, which means they are in this form ax squared plus b plus c. You've seen it before. We just got done graphing quadratics. Now we graph quadratics in vertex form. These are quadratics in standard form. The important part about the trinomials that we're going to factor today is the fact that the term that's in front of x squared is going to equal 1. Now when a does equal 1 and we're factoring trinomials, there's a shortcut. You have to look for it though. Once you know the shortcut, you're welcome to use it. Okay, so our very first problem and very first example, we've got x squared plus 4x minus 21. Now, we did some puzzles in that beforehand in order to get us prepped and get our memories working about how to find factors, things that multiply together. And so we are going to create essentially those puzzles again. And we're going to take this last term, the constant, and we're going to place it up here in this part of the x. Then we're going to take the middle term and we're going to place it down here in the bottom part of the x. And just like the puzzles that we did in class, so now our goal is to figure out what is going to go right here. And we're looking for two numbers that satisfy these two conditions that we just set up inside of this x. And those two conditions are this. The two numbers have to multiply to get you this term, but the two numbers must add to get you this term. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together to give you a negative 21, but those two numbers have to add up to give you 4. If they do not satisfy both conditions, then you don't have the right set of numbers. And the only ones that are going to work in this particular case would be a positive 7 and a negative 3. So remember, when you're multiplying to get a negative, one term has to be positive, one has to be negative. So that's an important piece. Now the whole reason we do that is because I'm going to take this beautiful 3-term problem and I'm going to turn it into a 4-term problem. Once I've turned it into a 4-term problem, I can factor by grouping. So I'm going to take this middle term here and I'm going to rename it using those two numbers that I just found. And it looks like this. Plus 7x minus 3x minus 21. So I didn't change the problem, I just kind of changed its appearance just slightly. So 7x minus 3x is still 4x, but it's just another way for me to write 4x. And now it's allowed me to get a 4-term problem from a 3-term problem, which means factoring by grouping is going to apply. So I kind of covered up my 1. So now we have our two groups. So first two terms in the first group, last two terms in the last group, and now I'm looking for my GCS. So I'm looking for the GCF of this first group, which should be x. Divide the x from each term. Don't forget, when we are doing this, we always put a big old plus sign because that's indicating that we're not done with the problem after this next step. We have one more step after that. And when this is a negative, we want to make sure we factor out a negative. Oh. Oops, that's 21. So what goes into negative 3 and negative 21? You could factor out a negative 3. Remember, factoring is dividing, so we're dividing that out of each term, and you're left with x plus 7. Now, to get your final answer as to what times what is going to actually equal x squared plus 4x minus 21, we now have to reevaluate this group, and we're going to take a look at it and say, hey, what does this group and this group have in common? They have an x plus 7 in common. So we're going to divide out that x plus 7, and if we divide that out of each one of those two groups, you're left with x minus 3. That is your final answer, and you have x plus 7 times x minus 3, which will multiply together to give you x squared plus 4x minus 21. Now take a look at the work, take a look at your answer, see if you can figure out the shortcut.